You are sitting in a conference room where the silence is loud enough to hear. Across the polished mahogany table sits the person holding the keys to your next chapter. Perhaps it's a client refusing to budge on a contract or a partner demanding terms you simply cannot accept. You look at them and you see absolute confidence. They are leaning back. They are smiling. They know you need this. Beneath you feels like the heaviest chair in the world. It isn't just made of leather and steel. It is anchored to the floor by your own desperation. Every instinct in your evolutionary wiring tells you to stay put. You have been conditioned to believe that persistence is the only path to success. You think that if you just explain your position one more time, or if you just concede one more point, you can salvage the deal. So, you grip the armrests until your knuckles turn white. You feel trapped. But consider the psychology of the person across from you. Their power exists only because you remain seated. They are banking on your fear of loss. As long as you stay in that chair, you aren't negotiating. You are pleading. Now imagine the pattern interrupt. You stop talking. You place your palms flat on the table. You push back. The sound of the chair legs scraping against the floor acts like a thunderclap in the quiet room. You stand up. You gather your things without saying a word. You turn your back and walk toward the door. In that split second, the oxygen leaves the room for them and rushes back into your lungs. You have just flipped the script. You are no longer the supplicant. You are the prize that is leaving the building. This is the mystery of the heavy chair. To win the game, you must be willing to stop playing it. The scent of desperation. There is a very specific frequency that human beings emit when they are cornered. It is not a sound you can hear with your ears, and it is not a visual cue you can always see with your eyes. It is a feeling. It is a heaviness in the air that enters the room before you do. It is the scent of desperation. Evolution has wired our brains to detect this scent with terrifying accuracy. In the ancient world, if a member of the tribe was anxious, frantic, or overly eager to please, it usually signaled a lack of resources or an impending threat. We are programmed to distance ourselves from desperation because desperation implies danger. It implies that the person in front of us is drowning, and if we get too close, they will pull us down with them. In the modern landscape of business and relationships, this biological radar is still fully active. When you walk into a negotiation room or a social setting with the internal belief that you must have the outcome you are chasing, you are broadcasting a signal of low value. You are telling the world that your survival depends on their acceptance. This is the greatest paradox of negotiation. The person who wants the deal the most is the person least likely to get favorable terms. The moment you need something, you have handed your leverage to the person who has it. Consider the dynamic of a high-stakes sale. Imagine a salesperson who has not met their quota for the month. Their mortgage is due. Their stress levels are spiking. They walk into a meeting with a potential client. They smile too much. They agree too quickly. They fill every silence with nervous chatter because silence feels like rejection. They are leaning forward, physically invading the space, trying to force a connection. To the client, this behavior is repulsive. It triggers a withdrawal response. The client may not consciously know why they feel uncomfortable, but their instincts are screaming that this salesperson is hiding something. They wonder why this person is so eager. If the product was truly valuable, wouldn't they be calm? If their services were in high demand, wouldn't they be indifferent to whether this specific deal closes? Value is inextricably linked to scarcity. Gold is valuable because it is rare. Air is vital, but we do not pay for it because it is everywhere. When you are desperate, you are abundant. You are available. You are easy. You are common. You have flooded the market with your own availability, and consequently, your price has crashed. Now contrast this with the psychology of the person who is willing to walk away. This brings us back to the heavy chair we discussed in the previous chapter. The person who is comfortable in the heavy chair is comfortable because they know they can stand up and leave it behind. When you possess the genuine ability to walk away, you emit a completely different frequency. It is the frequency of autonomy. You are signaling that your stability is internal, not external. You do not need their money, their validation, or their agreement to be whole. You simply have an offer. They can take it or they can leave it. This level of detachment is magnetic. Human beings are hunters by nature. We want what we cannot easily have. When you show a willingness to walk away, you become the prize. You flip the script. Suddenly, the client or the partner feels the fear of loss. They realize that you are a scarce resource. Let us look at this in the context of romantic relationships. The dynamic is identical. If one partner is constantly seeking reassurance, constantly texting, constantly checking in, they are reeking of desperation. They are signaling that they have no other options and that their self-worth is entirely dependent on the other person. This suffocates the relationship. It kills desire. Desire requires space. It requires a gap between two people that needs to be bridged. Desperation eliminates that gap. It collapses the space. But the moment that same partner focuses on their own life, their own goals, and their own dignity, the dynamic shifts. When they are willing to end the relationship rather than accept poor treatment, they suddenly become valuable again. They have demonstrated that they respect themselves more than they desire the relationship. That self-respect commands respect from others. The psychology of walking away is not just a tactic. It cannot be a fake performance. You cannot pretend to leave while secretly hoping they call you back. People can smell a bluff just as easily as they smell desperation. True walking away comes from a mindset of abundance. It is the deep understanding that opportunities are not singular. There is always another deal. There is always another job. There is always another potential partner. If you believe that the person in front of you is your last chance at happiness or success, you are doomed. You will tolerate disrespect. You will lower your price. You will compromise your values. You are a prisoner to your own scarcity mindset. To master the art of walking away, you must build a life that you do not need to escape from. You must cultivate options. In business, this is called having a BATNA, or a best alternative to a negotiated agreement. It means you know exactly what you will do if the deal falls through. If you walk into a salary negotiation knowing that you have 2 other job offers in your inbox, you are dangerous. You are powerful. You are relaxed. You lean back. You listen more than you speak. You are not afraid of silence. When the employer offers a number that is too low, you do not get angry. You do not beg. You simply pause. You might say that the number does not work for you. And then you wait. You are willing to let the deal die. That willingness to let the deal die is the only way to bring it to life on your terms. There is a precise moment in every negotiation where the power shifts. It is usually the moment when one party begins to pack up their things. The closing of the notebook, the capping of the pen, the pushing back of the chair. These physical actions send a shockwave through the room. It brings the reality of loss into the present moment. The other party suddenly has to confront the fact that you are not bluffing. They have to decide, right then and there, if they are willing to lose you. If they let you go, you have lost nothing, because you were never going to accept terms that did not serve you. But often, this is the moment they capitulate. This is the moment they offer the concession they were holding back. However, you must be careful. Walking away is not an act of aggression. It is not a temper tantrum. It is not slamming the door. Aggression is just another form of desperation. It shows you are emotionally compromised. It shows you care too much. The most effective walk away is calm. It is polite. It is regretful, but firm. It says, I wish we could have made this work, but I cannot do it under these conditions. This leaves the door slightly ajar for them to chase you, but it protects your dignity if they do not. The scent of desperation is the scent of a creature that has no choices. The atmosphere of power is the atmosphere of a human being who has curated a life of options. When you strip away the fear of loss, you see the situation clearly. You see the other person not as a savior, but as a counterpart. You see the deal not as a lifeline, but as a choice. This is the psychological bedrock of all leverage. You cannot negotiate for what you are afraid to lose. You must accept the loss before you even sit down. You must make peace with the empty chair. You must be content with the silence. Only then, when you are fully prepared to walk out the door and never look back, will you find that the world often runs to catch up with you. We will explore how to cultivate this internal strength and build the options that make walking away possible in the next segment. If you are finding value in this analysis of human dynamics and want to ensure you do not miss the strategies in the upcoming chapters, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel now. It supports the work we do here and ensures you stay ahead of the curve. The pedestal paradox. We have explored the burden of the heavy chair and the repelling nature of the scent of desperation. Now we arrive at the structural flaw that undermines almost every failed negotiation and every unrequited romantic pursuit. This is a flaw not of chemistry or finance, but of geometry. It is the architecture of the relationship as you perceive it in your mind. This is the pedestal paradox. To understand this paradox, we must look at how human beings assess value. Value is rarely objective. A glass of water is worthless to a man standing in a river, but it is worth a diamond to a man dying in a desert. The water has not changed. The context has changed. The perceived position of the resource has changed relative to the person who desires it. When you enter a high-stakes interaction, you often bring with you a silent and invisible construction crew. You look at the potential client or the attractive stranger, and you begin to build. You lay a foundation of admiration. You erect pillars of perceived importance. You decorate the structure with your own projections of their perfection or their power to solve your problems. Finally, you place them on top of this structure. You have built a pedestal. Here is the paradox. By placing them on a pedestal, you have automatically dug a hole for yourself. You cannot look up at someone without placing yourself beneath them. In your attempt to honor the value of the deal or the person, you have inherently devalued yourself. You have created a vertical dynamic where you are the supplicant and they are the benefactor. This geometry is fatal to negotiation. Consider the view from their perspective. They are standing up there on the pedestal you built. They look down. What do they see? They do not see a partner. They do not see an equal. They do not see a challenge. They see a fan. They see someone who is already conquered. Human psychology is driven by the pursuit of what is difficult to attain. We value what we must work for. When you place someone on a pedestal, you are signaling that they do not need to work for you. You have already awarded them the trophy before the race has even begun. This kills their curiosity. It suffocates their respect. In the business world, this manifests as the vendor who agrees to every demand before the contract is even drafted. The vendor believes they are being accommodating. They think that by showing the client how much they value the opportunity, they are securing the deal. They are wrong. They are signaling that their own time and resources are abundant and cheap. They are looking up from the bottom of the pit. The client senses this lack of gravity. They begin to wonder why this vendor is so eager. If they were truly the best in the market, would they be this easy to command? The pedestal makes the vendor look small. In romance, the dynamic is even more brutal. You meet someone who checks every box on your list. You become infatuated. You text them immediately. You clear your schedule to see them. You laugh too hard at their jokes. You are looking up at them. You think you are showing love, but you are actually showing a lack of self-worth. You are projecting a message that says you are lucky to be in their presence. If you are lucky to be there, it implies you do not belong there. The person on the pedestal feels this imbalance. It makes them uncomfortable. It is heavy to be an idol. It is boring to be worshipped. They want a partner who stands on solid ground, looking them in the eye, not someone kneeling in the dirt. Attraction requires tension, and tension requires equality. A string cannot vibrate if one end is slack. By lowering yourself, you remove the tension. The music stops. So how do you solve the pedestal paradox? You do not solve it by dragging them down. You solve it by walking away. Walking away is the only action that instantly shatters the vertical alignment. When you are willing to leave, you are demonstrating that your own ground is fertile enough to sustain you. You do not need their platform. Let us visualize the mechanics of this shift. You are in a negotiation. The terms are becoming unfavorable. The other party is acting entitled because they believe you need this deal. They are sitting comfortably on the pedestal you constructed. Then you stop. You close your notebook. You check your watch. You speak calmly. You tell them that you do not think this is the right fit. You stand up to leave. In that singular moment, the geometry changes. The pedestal collapses. They are no longer looking down at you. They are watching your back as you recede into the distance. Suddenly, they are the ones who are alone. The scarcity shifts from you to them. This is not a mystical trick. It is a reassertion of objective reality. You are a human being with options. You are a business with other clients. You are a partner with boundaries. Walking away forces the other person to confront the reality of your absence. We often fear that walking away is an act of destruction. We worry that we are burning a bridge. This is a false fear born of the scarcity mindset. Walking away is rarely the end of the interaction. It is often the true beginning of the negotiation. When you turn your back, you are communicating that your value is intrinsic. You carry your value with you. It is not derived from their approval or their money. This is magnetic. The pedestal paradox teaches us that we cannot grasp what is above us. We can only hold what is level with us. If you want the deal, you must be willing to kill the deal. If you want the person, you must be willing to lose the person. You must internalize the truth that no human being and no opportunity is worth the degradation of your own standing. When you elevate something too high, you make it impossible to reach. The moment you feel that strain in your neck from looking up is the moment you must prepare to walk. You must remind yourself that the pedestal is imaginary. It is a fiction of your own mind. The person across from you has flaws. The deal on the table has risks. The opportunity is just one of many. Kick the pedestal over. Stand on your own 2 feet. Look them in the eye. If they want to do business, let them walk across the flat ground to meet you. If they want to be with you, let them bridge the gap. Walking away is the great equalizer. It deletes the hierarchy. It clears the vision. It transforms a fan into a peer. The power to leave is the only power that matters, because it is the only power that cannot be taken from you. It is yours by birthright and by choice. Use it. Do not build monuments to others while you stand in the shadow. Walk into the sunlight and let them come to you. This is the only way to break the paradox. You must realize that the prize is not the person on the pedestal. The prize is your own self-respect. Once you secure that, everything else becomes negotiable. The bluffing trap. We have arrived at the most dangerous intersection in the psychology of negotiation. You have learned about the weight of your presence in the heavy chair. You have identified the repellent nature of desperation. You have dismantled the pedestal that elevates your opponent above their station. Now you stand at the threshold of action. You know you must be willing to walk away to hold power. But here is where the majority of people stumble into a pitfall so deep, It destroys their credibility forever. They pretend. This is the bluffing trap. It is the seduction of acting as if you are ready to leave when every fiber of your being is terrified of the exit. It is the performance of non-attachment without the substance of it. Understanding this trap is vital, because while desperation kills attraction, a failed bluff kills respect. And once respect is dead, it cannot be resurrected. Imagine a high-stakes scenario. A senior executive walks into the CEO's office. She feels undervalued. She has read the books. She knows the theory. She decides to play hardball. She sits down and delivers an ultimatum. Match this salary offer from a competitor, or I resign effective immediately. It sounds strong. It sounds like the heavy chair. But there is a problem. She has not actually updated her resume. She has not secured another offer. She has a mortgage that terrifies her. She does not want to leave this company. She wants them to fix her dissatisfaction so she can stay. The CEO is a veteran of human behavior. He looks at her. He does not see a woman ready to walk out the door. He sees a woman pleading to be kept. He sees the micro tremor in her hand. He hears the slight elevation in her pitch. He senses the incongruence between her aggressive words and her passive body language. He calls the bluff. He says, "We will miss you, but we cannot match that number. We accept your resignation." In that silence, the trap snaps shut. Now she has only two choices, and both are catastrophic. She can follow through on a threat she was not prepared to execute, throwing her life into chaos. Or she can fold. She can backtrack. She can say, "Well, perhaps we can find a middle ground." The moment she backtracks, her leverage evaporates. She has proven that her word is not gold, it is tin. She has demonstrated that her boundaries are flexible and her threats are empty. She is no longer a negotiator. She is a hostage. This happens in boardrooms, and it happens in living rooms. Consider the partner who constantly threatens to break up during arguments. They pack a bag. They stand by the door. They shout that this is the end, but they never leave. They wait for the other person to stop them. The first time, it might create panic. The second time, it creates annoyance. By the third time, the partner hands them their coat and opens the door. The psychology behind the bluffing trap is rooted in a fundamental misunderstanding of what walking away actually is. Most people view walking away as a tactic. They see it as a move on a chessboard designed to manipulate the opponent into making a move. They think, if I look like I am leaving, they will chase me. But walking away is not a tactic. It is a reality. It is not something you do to someone else. It is something you do for yourself. The human animal is an expert at pattern recognition. We have spent hundreds of thousands of years evolving to detect deception. We are hardwired to notice when someone is lying to us. When you bluff, you create a physiological dissonance. Your heart rate increases, your cortisol spikes, your eyes search for validation. You are projecting two conflicting signals. Your mouth says, "I am gone," but your energy screams, "Please stop me." This inconsistency makes you untrustworthy. In business and in love, trust is the currency of value. When you try to counterfeit that currency by bluffing, you are treated like a fraud. To escape the bluffing trap, you must fundamentally change your objective. You must stop trying to control the outcome and start controlling your own standards. The person who truly holds the power is the one who has accepted the worst-case scenario. This is the secret that the bluffer misses. The bluffer is trying to avoid the loss. The master negotiator has already accepted the loss. Let us go back to that executive. Imagine she did the work before the meeting. She looked at her finances. She polished her portfolio. She mentally detached from the identity of her current job. She sat in her living room and made peace with the idea of unemployment. She realized she would survive. She realized she might even thrive. When she walks into that office, she is not performing. She is informing. She says the same words. Match this offer, or I resign. But the frequency is different. Her heartbeat is slow. Her eyes are steady. She is not leaning forward, begging for a counteroffer. She is leaning back, comfortable with the silence. The CEO looks at her and sees a wall of calm. He feels the vacuum of her potential absence. He realizes that this is not a negotiation about money anymore. It is a negotiation about keeping talent. If he says no, she stands up, shakes his hand, and walks out. She does not look back. She does not hesitate, because she was never bluffing. That is the paradox. The only time you can safely use the threat of walking away is when it is not a threat at all. It must be a promise. You cannot fake this state of mind. You cannot act your way into leverage. You must build the infrastructure of your life so that you truly do not need the deal. In relationships, this means having a strong sense of self-worth that exists independently of your partner. It means having friends, hobbies, passions, and a purpose that sustains you. If your entire world collapses without this one person, you cannot walk away. You can only bluff, and they will know it. The bluffer is a child wearing a costume. The person who is ready to walk is an adult wearing armor. The transition from bluffing to being takes internal work. It requires you to confront your fear of the void. Why are you so afraid to lose this deal? Why are you so terrified to be alone? Usually, the answer lies in scarcity. You believe this is the only client, the only job, or the only lover who will ever accept you. That belief is the shackle. As long as you believe in scarcity, you will be tempted to bluff. You will try to manipulate the world into giving you what you want without risking what you have. But nature does not reward those who refuse to risk. Nature rewards reality. When you are truly ready to walk away, you stop monitoring the other person's reaction. The bluffer is obsessed with the opponent's face. Is it working? Are they scared? Are they breaking? The person who is ready to leave is looking at the horizon. They are looking at their future. They are not waiting for permission to exit. They are already halfway out the door in their mind. This indifference is magnetic. It is the ultimate display of high value. It signals that you have options. It signals that you are not a beggar at the feast, but a chef with your own kitchen. There is a terrifying liberation in destroying the bluff. You stop playing games. You become honest. You become dangerous in the best possible way. You become a person who says what they mean and does what they say. If you tell a client, "I cannot work for this rate," and they refuse to budge, you wish them well and you hang up the phone. You do not wait for them to call back. You move on to the next prospect. Often, that phone will ring 5 minutes later. They will suddenly find the budget. They will suddenly find the respect. But if you answer that call with relief, you lose. You must answer it with curiosity. You must maintain the standard. If they do not call back, you have lost nothing. You have lost a low-value engagement that would have drained you. You have kept your time. You have kept your dignity. You have kept your heavy chair. The bluffing trap is a cage made of fear. It is the fear that you are not enough on your own. It is the fear that if you let go, you will fall. Chapter 4 asks you to stop pretending to be brave. It asks you to do the preparation required to actually be brave. Do not threaten. Do not posture. Do not raise your voice. Simply know your line. And when that line is crossed, do not look for a reaction. Look for the exit. Walking away is not a bargaining chip. It is the distinct sound of a door closing on a room that no longer serves you. Once you understand this, you are ready for the next phase. You are ready to understand what happens to the human mind when it encounters someone who cannot be possessed. We move now to Chapter 5, the vacuum effect. The vacuum of silence. The moment you turn your back marks the beginning of the real negotiation. It is not the loud argument or the final offer that shifts the balance of power. It is the silence that follows. We have discussed the weight of your presence and the danger of desperation. We have analyzed the error of placing others on a pedestal and the trap of the bluff. Now we arrive at the execution. This is the moment where physical action ceases and psychological pressure begins. Most people misunderstand the act of walking away. They view it as an ending. They see it as the credits rolling on a failed movie. This is a fundamental error. Walking away is not the end of the interaction. It is a strategic pause designed to recalibrate the value of the exchange. It creates a specific psychological environment that I call the vacuum of silence. To understand why this works, you must look at basic human nature. We are social creatures wired for connection and feedback. When we speak, we expect a response. When we act, we expect a reaction. This loop of stimulus and response creates a sense of safety and predictability. It confirms that we exist and that we matter to the person in front of us. When you walk away, you sever that loop. You create a void. In the physical world, nature abhors a vacuum. Air will rush in to fill an empty space. The pressure differential forces movement. The human mind works in an identical fashion. When you remove your attention and your presence, you create a psychological low-pressure system. The person you have left behind feels this instantly. The space where you used to be is now empty, and that emptiness is terrifying to the human ego. Consider the negotiation table. You have stated your terms. They have refused. You pack your bag. You stand up. You offer a polite nod, and you leave the room. What happens to the person sitting in the chair? For the first few seconds, they feel relief. They think they have won. They held their ground, and you retreated. But as the seconds turn into minutes, and the silence in the room grows heavy, a shift occurs. The relief fades and is replaced by curiosity. Why did you leave so easily? Why was there no fight? Why was there no desperate attempt to meet in the middle? Curiosity quickly degrades into anxiety. The silence acts as a mirror. Without your voice there to distract them, they are forced to sit with their own thoughts. They begin to replay the interaction. They analyze their last sentence. They wonder if they were too harsh or too greedy. This is the power of the vacuum. It forces the other party to negotiate with themselves on your behalf. When you stay and argue, you are the opponent. They can direct their frustration and their logic at you. They can use your words as ammunition to fortify their own position. But when you are gone, they are fighting a ghost. They are fighting the possibility of loss. The vacuum of silence draws out their insecurities. If this is a business deal, they begin to calculate the cost of starting over with someone else. They think about the time lost. They think about the boss they have to report to and explain why the deal fell through. Your absence makes the problem larger. If this is a personal relationship, the dynamic is even more potent. The person who is walked away from is immediately confronted with the reality of life without you. When you are present and pleading, they feel suffocated. They feel certain of their value because you are constantly affirming it with your pursuit. When you withdraw, that affirmation vanishes. They are left in the cold. They begin to wonder if they overestimated their own worth. They check their phone. There is nothing. They check their email. There is nothing. This silence is not passive. It is an active force. It is the loudest thing you can possibly do. However, there is a critical rule to creating this vacuum. It must be absolute. This is where most people fail. They physically walk away, but they leave the door cracked open. They send a text message an hour later to clarify their point. They call the next day to check in. They leave a comment on social media. Every time you break the silence, you destroy the vacuum. You release the pressure. You allow the other person to relax because they know you are still there. You are still tethered to them. The fear of loss evaporates, and you return to square one. To execute this strategy effectively, you must possess the discipline to vanish. You must become a ghost. This requires you to conquer your own anxiety. When you walk away, your own mind will scream at you. It will tell you that they are going to forget you. It will tell you that you are making a mistake. It will urge you to reach out just to make sure they know you are serious. You must ignore these impulses. You must understand that the silence hurts them far more than it hurts you, because you are the one who initiated it. You are the one in control of the valve. They are the one trapped in the chamber. Let the silence do the heavy lifting. During this period of separation, the other person's imagination goes to work. Imagination is a far more persuasive tool than logic. When they imagine losing you, they do not picture the arguments or the boring moments. The human brain is wired to romanticize what it cannot have. They start to remember your best qualities. They remember the profit you brought. They remember the comfort you provided. This is the process of idealization, and it only happens in your absence. You cannot be idealized while you are standing in the room asking for validation. You can only be idealized when you are gone. The vacuum also forces them to face the alternative. If they do not call you back, they have to go out into the world and find a replacement. That requires effort. That requires risk. Most people are inherently lazy and risk-averse. The known quantity of you, even if you are currently demanding more than they want to give, is safer than the unknown quantity of a stranger. Eventually, the pressure becomes too great. The vacuum demands to be filled. This is when the phone rings. This is when the email arrives. When they reach out across the silence, the dynamic has fundamentally flip-flopped. They are now the pursuer. They are the one trying to bridge the gap. They are coming to you not from a position of strength, but from a position of needing to resolve the tension that you created. Do not be quick to relieve them. When you break the silence, you must do so slowly. If you answer the phone on the first ring with excitement, you undo the work. You signal that you were sitting by the phone waiting for them. You signal that the walkaway was a stunt. Instead, you must maintain the same measured control that you had when you left. You are not angry. You are not bitter. You are simply moving on. This attitude confirms that your walkaway was genuine. It confirms that you are a person of high value who has other options. This validates their fear that they nearly lost you. It cements the lesson in their mind. They learn that your presence is conditional. They learn that you cannot be taken for granted. The vacuum of silence is the ultimate corrective tool. It fixes bad behavior without a single word of criticism. It resets the price of the negotiation without a single counteroffer. But you must be willing to let the silence stretch. You must be comfortable in the void. There will be hours or days where nothing happens. This is the testing period. This is where your resolve is measured against their pride. The person with the least need for the deal will always win this contest. If you can inhabit the silence, you become formidable. You become the person who does not need to shout to be heard. You become the person who speaks through action. Chapter 5 concludes here. The silence is now yours to command. In Chapter 6, we will examine the inevitability of the return and how to handle the moment they come running back. We call this the re-entry protocol, cutting the anchor. We have arrived at the most painful part of the journey. You have learned how to ignore the heavy chair and move with agility. You have scrubbed away the scent of desperation that repels high-value targets. You have stopped placing your counterpart on a pedestal, and you have avoided the trap of bluffing. You have even learned to sit comfortably in the vacuum of silence. But now you face the most formidable enemy of all. You are not fighting the person across the table. You are fighting yourself. You are fighting your own history. Imagine a ship sitting in the harbor. The captain wants to leave. The engines are rumbling, and the crew is ready. But the ship does not move. It churns the water into white foam, but it stays exactly where it is. The problem is not the engine. The problem is the anchor. It is buried deep in the mud below. The captain refuses to cut the chain because that anchor cost a fortune. He refuses to cut the chain because he has spent 3 hours trying to hoist it up. He thinks that if he just pulls a little harder, he will retrieve his iron and sail away with everything intact. So the ship stays. The tide goes out. The ship runs aground. The captain keeps his anchor but loses his vessel. This is the sunk cost fallacy. In the context of negotiation and relationships, we call it the anchor of investment. It is the single heaviest psychological weight you will ever carry. It is the reason people stay in bad marriages for 20 years. It is the reason business owners pour millions of dollars into failing projects. It is the reason you are still sitting at the negotiation table when you should have left an hour ago. The psychology behind this is rooted in a primitive survival mechanism known as loss aversion. To the human brain, losing something feels twice as bad as gaining something feels good. Losing $10 causes a level of distress that is disproportionate to the joy of finding $10. We are wired to hoard our resources. We are wired to protect what we have already spent. When you have spent 6 months negotiating a merger, you have invested time. You have invested legal fees. You have invested emotional energy. You have flown across the country. You have missed dinners with your family. All of that effort forms a heavy iron weight at the bottom of the sea. The person across from you knows this. They are counting on it. They know that you have invested too much to quit now. They know you are anchored. This gives them the power to chip away at your terms. They ask for a small concession. You grant it because you do not want to lose the 6 months of work. Then they ask for another. You grant that too. Slowly and methodically, they strip you of your value because they know you are terrified of severing the chain. You tell yourself you are being persistent. You tell yourself you are committed. But you are not committed to the goal. You are committed to your past mistakes. You are trying to justify the time you have already wasted by wasting more time. Cutting the anchor requires a cold and brutal calculation. It requires you to look at the investment you have made and realize it is gone. That money is spent. That time is vanished. It is never coming back regardless of whether you sign the deal or not. The past is ash. The only thing that exists is the future. When you understand this, you become dangerous. You become free. Let us look at how this plays out in the real world. Consider the sale of a house. The seller has been on the market for a year. They have paid for staging. They have paid for repairs. A buyer comes in with a low offer. The seller is insulted. They think about all the money they have spent maintaining the property. They reject the offer because it does not validate their investment. They hold on. Another year passes. The market drops. They eventually sell for even less. They were anchored to a number that represented their effort rather than the reality of the market. Now imagine a master negotiator in the same scenario. He looks at the low offer. He does not think about the repairs or the staging fees. Those are sunk costs. He looks only at the future. Is this cash better than holding the asset for another year? If the answer is yes, he takes the deal. If the answer is no, he walks away. He has no emotional attachment to the money he has already burned. This applies to the heart as well as the wallet. Think of the toxic relationship. You know it is broken. You know there is no future. But you stay. You stay because you have been together for 5 years. You say to yourself that you cannot throw away 5 years of history. This is the anchor talking. You are not saving the past 5 years by staying. You are simply sacrificing the next 5 years. You are paying a future tax to protect a past debt that can never be repaid. To cut the anchor, you must accept a momentary sharp pain to avoid a lifetime of dull, aching suffering. You must accept that the resources you spent are gone. When you are in a negotiation and you feel that familiar tug in your gut, you must pause. That tug is the fear of walking away empty-handed. It is the fear that you did all this work for nothing. You must recognize that feeling for what it is. It is not intuition. It is not wisdom. It is a biological trick designed to make you irrational. The moment you are willing to cut the anchor, the dynamic in the room shifts instantly. When the other party realizes you do not care about the sunk costs, they lose their leverage. They can no longer use your own investment against you. Imagine you are in a boardroom. The deal has stalled. The terms are becoming unfavorable. You have been there for 8 hours. The air is stale. The other side pushes for one last unfair clause. They think you will fold because you want to go home with a signed paper. Instead, you close your notebook. You stand up. You look them in the eye and you say that the terms are not acceptable. You thank them for their time. You begin to walk to the door. There is no anger in your movement. There is no bluff. You have mentally written off the last 8 hours. You have accepted the loss of this day. You are cutting the chain. Panic will strike the other side. They were banking on your anchor. They thought you were trapped. Suddenly they realize that you are a ship that can sail at any moment. They realize that they are about to lose everything they invested in this meeting. The fear of loss transfers from you to them. Often they will call you back. They will drop the unfair clause. They will scramble to reattach the line. But even if they do not, you have won. You have won because you did not agree to a bad deal just to save face. You saved your future capacity to find a better partner. Walking away is not a failure. It is a strategic purge. It is the act of clearing the deck. You must practice this in small ways before you can do it in the big moments. Practice walking out of a movie that is boring even if you paid for the ticket. Practice putting down a book that does not interest you even if you are halfway through. Practice leaving a restaurant line that is not moving even if you have stood there for 10 minutes. Train your brain to value your future time more than your past time. Train yourself to see the anchor for what it is. It is a rusty piece of iron that serves only one purpose: to keep you stuck. When you finally cut it, you will feel lighter. You will feel the sudden rush of forward momentum. The sea is vast, and there are other harbors. There are other deals. There are other people. But you will never meet them if you are tethered to the mud of your past decisions. Take the knife. Sever the line. Leave the anchor behind. Let the dead weight bury itself. You have a ship to sail. This is the ultimate freedom of the master negotiator. You are never owned by your past. You are owned only by your options. And your options are limitless as long as you are willing to walk away. The price of re-entry. You have done the hardest part. You felt the weight of the heavy chair, and you sat in it anyway. You ignored the scent of desperation. You dismantled the pedestal. You avoided the bluffing trap. You endured the vacuum of silence, and finally, you cut the anchor. You walked away. Now comes the aftermath. Most people view walking away as an ending. They see it as the final scene in a movie where the screen fades to black. But in the real world of business and complex human relationships, the story rarely ends the moment you exit the room. The story continues because human nature is predictable. When you remove your attention and your resources from the table, you create a void. That void generates a gravitational pull. The person or the company you left behind will often feel that pull. They will panic. They will reassess. And very often, they will come running back. This is the moment of greatest danger. It is tempting to view their return as a victory. You might feel a rush of validation. You think to yourself that your tactic worked. They missed you. They realized your value. The natural impulse is to open the door wide and welcome them back in with a smile. You want to pick up exactly where you left off, but with the comforting knowledge that you were right. Do not do this. If you simply resume the negotiation or the relationship on the exact same terms as before, you have wasted the entire effort of walking away. You have taught the other party nothing except that your absence is temporary and your resolve is weak. You have shown them that walking away was a performance rather than a decision. This brings us to the concept of the price of re-entry. Imagine a high-security vault. Once the door is sealed, it takes a tremendous amount of effort and authorization to open it again. It does not swing open just because someone knocks politely. Your value and your time must be treated like that vault. When you walked away, you closed the door. If the other party wants to come back in, they must pay a toll. The terms have changed. The old deal is dead. The version of you that accepted those previous conditions no longer exists. The price for access to you has gone up. In a business context, this is purely mathematical. Let us say a client was demanding a discount that eroded your margins. You declined and walked away. A week later, they call you back. They tell you they are ready to move forward with your original proposal. The amateur says great and sends over the contract. The master negotiator pauses. The master negotiator realizes that the client is returning because they looked at the market and realized you were the best option. Your leverage is now absolute. If you accept the original deal, you are essentially telling the client that your time during that week of silence was worth nothing. You are telling them that you were just sitting by the phone waiting for them to ring. Instead, you must levy a tax. This is the price of re-entry. You might explain that since the initial proposal expired, your availability has shifted. The timeline they wanted is no longer possible without a rush fee. Or perhaps the price of materials has fluctuated. You are not being malicious. You are demonstrating that your time is a finite resource that moves forward. It does not pause for their indecision. By adding a premium or changing the terms in your favor, you subconsciously signal high status. You confirm their suspicion that you are in demand. If they are willing to pay the higher price or agree to the stricter terms, they will value the partnership significantly more than if you had simply rolled over. You are training them to treat you with respect. This dynamic is even more critical in personal relationships. When you walk away from a partner or a friend because of repeated disrespect or a violation of boundaries, you have severed the connection. You have prioritized your well-being over the comfort of the status quo. If they return and ask for another chance, the price of re-entry must be paid in changed behavior. An apology is not a price. Words are cheap. Words are free. If you accept an apology and immediately restore full intimacy and trust, you have set a precedent. You have established that the cost of disrespecting you is merely a conversation. The price of re-entry in this context means they must earn their way back to the center of your life. They start at the periphery. They do not get the same access to your time and your emotional energy. They must demonstrate consistency over time. Think of it as a probation period. You are watching. You are assessing. You are not being cruel, but you are being protective of the new standard you have set for yourself. If they balk at this new distance, or if they complain that you are being difficult, then they do not actually value you. They only valued your compliance. The psychology here is rooted in the concept of sunk cost and scarcity. When you walk away, you create scarcity. You become a rare commodity. When they return, they are trying to alleviate the anxiety of that scarcity. If you make it too easy to relieve that anxiety, they will not learn the lesson. They will eventually revert to the same behaviors that caused the problem in the first place, because the cost of those behaviors was negligible. However, if the return is difficult and if it requires them to sacrifice their ego or their resources, they become invested in the new dynamic. We value what we pay for. If they have to pay a heavy emotional or financial price to get you back, they will be far less likely to risk losing you again. You must internalize the idea that you are the prize. This is not arrogance. It is a necessary survival strategy in a world of competing interests. When you walk away, you are taking the prize off the market. Putting it back on the market requires a new valuation. There is a fear that holds people back from applying this tax. You worry that if you ask for more, or if you stand your ground, they will leave again, and this time it will be permanent. You worry that you are pushing your luck. This fear is an illusion. You must remember that you were the one who walked away first. You were already willing to lose the deal or the relationship. You have already faced the worst-case scenario, and you survived it. You have nothing to lose by holding your ground now. If they walk away because the price of re-entry is too high, then they were never serious about meeting your value. They were looking for a bargain. And you are not a bargain. This phase requires a calm and detached demeanor. You cannot demand the price of re-entry with anger or resentment. It is not about punishment. It is about policy. It is simply the new reality of doing business with you. You state the new terms plainly. You explain the new boundaries clearly. You do not justify yourself. You do not apologize for the changes. You simply present the reality. This is what it takes to re-engage. The choice is theirs. By enforcing the price of re-entry, you solidify the power shift that began when you walked away. You move from a position of reacting to a position of directing. You are no longer pleading for respect. You are charging for access. This is the ultimate test of your resolve. Walking away takes a moment of courage. Maintaining your standards when they come back takes a lifetime of discipline. But the reward is a life where your boundaries are honored and your time is compensated. Once you understand this, you will stop fearing the silence that follows a departure. You will stop checking your phone hoping they call. You will focus on your own path, knowing that if they do call, they will be the ones who have to do the work. You are not waiting for them. You are moving forward. If they want to catch up, they can pay the fare. In the next and final chapter, we will discuss how to internalize this shift permanently so that you never have to fake it. We will talk about building a life so rich and a purpose so clear that walking away becomes your natural state whenever you are faced with anything less than what you deserve. We will discuss the abundance mindset that makes the heavy chair feel light. The abundance narrative. We have spent 7 chapters dissecting the mechanics of the exit. We have analyzed the weight of the chair you sit in and the heavy silence you must endure. We have discussed how to cut the anchor and how to charge a tax for re-entry. But there is a hidden fracture in the foundation of most negotiators that renders every tactic we have discussed useless. You can master the silence. You can feign the lack of interest. You can recite the scripts perfectly. Yet, if your internal world is built on scarcity, all of these maneuvers will crumble under the slightest pressure. The fracture is the belief that the deal in front of you is the only deal that exists. This is the scarcity trap. To understand why walking away is the ultimate power move, you must understand the narrative running through the mind of the person who stays. The person who stays is terrified of the void. They look at a bad relationship or a mediocre business offer, and they do not see a problem to be solved. They see a life raft. When you view an opportunity as a life raft, you will tolerate leaks. You will tolerate a lack of supplies. You will tolerate a captain who abuses you. You tolerate these things not because you enjoy them, but because the alternative is drowning. This fear is primal. It is etched into the deepest parts of the human brain. For thousands of years, isolation meant death. Scarcity of food meant death. Losing a tribe meant death. We are the descendants of the anxious. We are the descendants of the people who held on tightest to what little they had. But in the modern landscape, this biological wiring is a liability. It makes you heavy. It makes you sticky. It makes you desperate. The abundance narrative is the psychological antidote to this evolutionary anxiety. It is not a spiritual affirmation. It is not staring into a mirror and lying to yourself about how wealthy or desired you are. It is a calculated restructuring of your reality based on evidence and logistics. Abundance is the realization that the world is mathematically vast. Consider the dynamic of a job interview. Candidate A walks in with 0 offers. He has rent due in 3 days. He has not had an interview in 6 months. When he sits in the chair, every micro-expression on his face screams compliance. He laughs too hard at the interviewer's jokes. He nods too enthusiastically. He is terrified of saying the wrong thing. He cannot walk away because he has nowhere to walk to. The interviewer smells this. The scent of desperation we discussed in Chapter 2 floods the room. The salary offer will be low because the interviewer knows this candidate has no leverage. Now consider Candidate B. She walks in with 3 offers already on her desk. 1 is good. 1 is great. 1 is a safety net. She does not need this job. She is merely curious if this job can beat what she already holds. Her posture is different. She leans back. She asks difficult questions. She pauses before answering. She is not performing for the interviewer. She is auditing them. If the salary is too low, she simply stands up and thanks them for their time. This is the abundance narrative in action. It is the difference between begging for water and selling water. The crucial insight here is that you cannot fake this state effectively over the long term. You might bluff for an hour. You might bluff for a day. But eventually the truth of your scarcity will bleed through. Therefore, the prerequisite for being able to walk away is the relentless construction of options. In business, this means you never stop filling the pipeline. You never stop prospecting. You never rely on a single client for your survival. If you have 1 client, you are an employee. If you have 5 clients, you are a business owner. If you have 20 clients, you are a king. When you have 20 clients, you can fire the one who disrespects you. You can walk away from the deal that does not serve you because the revenue loss is a statistic, not a tragedy. In relationships, the logic is uncomfortable but identical. The myth of the one keeps people trapped in toxicity. We tell ourselves a romantic story that there is only one person on this planet meant for us. This narrative creates a prison. If there is only one person, then you must tolerate their bad behavior. You must tolerate their indifference. You must tolerate their betrayal. Because if you leave them, you face the void. The abundance narrative shatters this myth. It acknowledges that there are billions of people on the planet. It acknowledges that compatibility is something you build, not something you find by magic. When you realize that you are capable of connecting with many people, you lose the fear of losing one specific person who refuses to treat you with respect. You are no longer holding on to a cactus because you are afraid there are no other plants in the garden. You put the cactus down and you walk toward the rest of the garden. This shift in mindset changes your physiology. When you operate from abundance, your heart rate slows down during confrontation. You do not feel the spike of cortisol that demands you fix the situation immediately. You become comfortable with unresolved tension. The person with options is the person who controls the timeline. Scarcity demands speed. The desperate man needs the deal signed today. The desperate lover needs the commitment now. Abundance waits. Abundance knows that time clarifies the truth. When you are willing to let the clock tick, you force the other party to reveal their hand. Implementing the abundance narrative requires a change in how you spend your energy. Most people spend their energy trying to save the deal they are currently in. They expend massive effort trying to convince the other person to change. They argue, they negotiate, they compromise. The master of walking away spends that energy elsewhere. They do not fight to save the dying deal. They fight to create new ones. Instead of arguing with a bad client, they spend that hour calling new prospects. Instead of fighting with a partner who does not value them, they spend that time improving their own value and expanding their social circle. You must become the architect of your own safety net. You cannot wait for someone else to give you permission to feel secure. You build security by accumulating resources. You accumulate skills. You accumulate connections. You accumulate capital. When you know you can survive without the other person, you become dangerous in the best possible way. You become honest. You stop shaping your words to please them. You say exactly what you mean because you are indifferent to the outcome. If they like it, you can do business. If they do not like it, you can part ways. This honesty is magnetic. It is rare. In a world full of people pleasing and manipulation, the person who speaks the truth without fear is incredibly attractive. The abundance narrative transforms walking away from a tactic into a lifestyle. It ceases to be something you do to manipulate a result. It becomes a simple assessment of value. You are no longer thinking about how to trick them into chasing you. You are thinking about whether this situation meets your standards. If the table does not serve what you ordered, you do not flip the table. You do not scream at the waiter. You do not sit there and eat the cold food while resenting the restaurant. You simply stand up. You leave the cash for what you consumed. And you walk out the door to the restaurant across the street. That is the freedom of abundance. It turns the heavy steel door of the exit into an open archway. You are not escaping a dungeon. You are simply moving to a better room. Once you have internalized that the world is full of opportunities, you will never again accept a heavy chair. You will never again sit in the scent of desperation. You will never again place someone on a pedestal. You will realize that the power was never in their hands. It was in your feet, and your feet are ready to walk. This brings us to the final evolution of this philosophy. Once you have mastered the walk away, you must understand the end game. You do not walk away to destroy. You walk away to build. But to build correctly, you must know exactly what you are building toward. This requires a vision that goes beyond the negotiation table. We have cleared the path. We have unlocked the door. Now we must look at the horizon. The respect reflex. There is a mechanism deeply buried in the human psyche that operates faster than conscious thought. It is not a calculation or a logical deduction. It is a reflex. Just as your knee kicks forward when tapped in the right spot, the human mind instinctively reassesses the value of an object the moment that object threatens to disappear. We have spent the previous chapters dismantling the errors of desperation and the traps of bluffing, but now we arrive at the core transformation. This is the moment where the dynamic shifts from a pursuit of agreement to the establishment of authority. This is the respect reflex. Consider how most people approach a stalling negotiation or a failing relationship. They believe that the solution to a lack of appreciation is an increase in effort. They think that if they just explain their perspective one more time, or lower their fee by another 5%, or send one more thoughtful message, the other person will finally see the light. They operate under the illusion that respect is something you earn through submission. They believe that if they are agreeable enough and accommodating enough, the other party will eventually reward them with loyalty. History and psychology show us that the exact opposite is true. When you make yourself endlessly available and malleable, you do not demonstrate your value. You demonstrate your lack of options. In the brutal arithmetic of social dynamics, scarcity creates value and abundance creates waste. If your presence is guaranteed regardless of how you are treated, your presence becomes worthless. The human brain is designed to filter out consistent stimuli. We stop hearing the hum of the refrigerator. We stop noticing the pressure of our clothes against our skin. And we stop valuing the partner or the business associate who is always there no matter what. The respect reflex is triggered only when that constant presence vanishes. It is the psychological shock that occurs when the door clicks shut. When you are sitting at the negotiation table trying to convince someone of your worth, you are merely a bidder. You are asking for validation. But when you pack your bag and stand up, you become a prize. The dynamic flips instantly. You are no longer trying to acquire something from them. You are now something they are about to lose. This transition is not about anger or theatrics. It is not about storming out of a room to cause a scene. That is the behavior of a child throwing a tantrum. The respect reflex is triggered by a calm and calculated withdrawal. It is the quiet realization that the terms on the table do not meet your requirements, and therefore you are removing your labor and your attention. When you execute this move, you force the other party to face the reality of the void you leave behind. Until that moment, they were comfortable. They felt secure in the knowledge that they held the leverage. They could dictate terms because they could smell your fear of losing the deal. By walking away, you shatter that security. You prove that you are not bluffing. You prove that your self-interest is stronger than your desire for their approval. This creates a cognitive dissonance in their mind. They have to reconcile two conflicting facts. First, they thought they had the upper hand. Second, you just fired them. The only way for their brain to resolve this conflict is to reevaluate your status. They must admit that they underestimated you. In that moment of reevaluation, respect is born. It is not the warm, fuzzy kind of respect that comes from friendship. It is the cold, hard respect that comes from recognizing a formidable equal. This reflex is involuntary. Even if they are angry that you walked away, they cannot help but respect the strength it took to do so. We are biologically wired to admire autonomy. We look at the person who can survive without us, and we instinctively assign them higher status. The person who needs nothing is the person who commands everything. Think about the times in your own life when you have felt the sudden pang of loss. It is rarely when things are going smoothly. It is when something you took for granted is suddenly threatened. The client who cancels the contract, the partner who stops calling, the employee who hands in a resignation letter. Suddenly, you are scrambling. You are analyzing what went wrong. You are willing to make concessions that were impossible yesterday. Why? Because the asset has become mobile. It is moving away from you, and your instinct is to chase it. By walking away, you harness this instinct in others. You stop being the hunter, and you become the prey. You activate their chase drive. But you must understand that this is not a game of manipulation. It is a demonstration of reality. You are not pretending to leave to get a better price. You are actually leaving because the price is wrong. This distinction is critical. If you fake the walk away, you will likely return too soon or with too much eagerness. You will reveal the bluff and destroy your credibility. The respect reflex only works if the withdrawal is genuine. You must be fully prepared to never return to that table. You must be at peace with the idea that the relationship is over. It is this genuine willingness to let go that gives your action its power. When you possess this willingness, you carry yourself differently. You speak with a different cadence. You are not pleading. You are stating facts. You are not asking for permission. You are setting parameters. The other party can sense this shift in your frequency. They can feel that you are untethered. This makes you dangerous in a negotiation context, and being dangerous is the quickest path to being respected. We often fear that walking away will burn bridges. We worry that we will be seen as rude or difficult. But look at the people in your industry or your social circle who are the most highly regarded. Are they the ones who say yes to everything? Are they the ones who tolerate bad behavior with a smile? No. They are the ones with boundaries. They are the ones who are selective. They are the ones who are known for high standards. When you walk away from a bad deal, you are not burning a bridge. You are building a reputation. You are signaling to the market and to your peers that you know the value of your time and your contribution. This reputation precedes you. It does the work for you before you even enter the next room. People prepare differently for a person known to have options. They bring their best offer first because they know that second chances are not guaranteed. The respect reflex is also an act of self-definition. By refusing to accept less than you deserve, you reinforce your own identity. You tell yourself that you are not desperate. This internal narrative is just as important as the external effect. Every time you stay in a situation that diminishes you, a piece of your psychology erodes. You teach yourself that you are trapped. But every time you exercise the option to leave, you strengthen the neural pathways of agency. You remind yourself that you are the architect of your own engagement. This is why the walk away is the ultimate negotiation tactic. It cuts through the noise. It renders all the rhetorical tricks and pressure tactics irrelevant. It is the nuclear option that resets the playing field. Even if they let you go, they will remember you. And if they call you back, which they often will, they will do so with a completely different demeanor. The power dynamic will have equalized. Do not be afraid of the silence that follows your departure. Do not rush to fill it with apologies or check-ins. Let the silence do the heavy lifting. Let them sit in the vacuum you created. In that space, they will confront their own need for what you provide. They will run the numbers and realize the cost of replacing you is higher than the cost of meeting your terms. As we move toward the final chapter, remember that respect is a reflex triggered by strength. It is not a gift given to the weak. It is a reaction to the presence of boundaries. You trigger it not by asking for it, but by demonstrating that your self-respect is non-negotiable. You trigger it by showing that you are capable of walking through the door and never looking back. This is the only way to ensure that if you do return, you return to a seat at the head of the table. The open road. The power to walk away is not about abandonment. It is about self-preservation and the clear recognition of value. Throughout this journey, we have dismantled the heavy chair of obligation and silenced the desperate need for validation. You now understand that the strongest position at any table is one of genuine optionality. When you are no longer terrified of losing a deal or a relationship, you paradoxically become the most attractive person in the room. This is the final transformation. You are not bluffing. You are simply exercising your capacity for choice. The open road represents a life where you select your path based on alignment rather than fear. There is no magic here. There is only the psychological reality that we value what we cannot control, and we respect those who respect themselves enough to leave. As you move forward, remember that your greatest leverage is your willingness to pack up and find a better destination. The road is open, and for the first time you are driving.